Ahoy Maties! Welcome to the seas. This is Damron. We're playing Sea of Thieves. We're on Season 8, which has brought us a ton of new content, mostly related around PvP. In this video, we're going to cover everything that you need to know about this PvP update, as well as some behind-the-scenes things that kind of snuck in this update. We'll cover everything. There's a lot packed in here, mainly regarding the new battle for the Sea of Thieves, which we will be going into in depth. I'll talk about all the good things and all the bad things about it. There's some things that certainly need to be fixed and improved, and we'll get into that. As always, as I mentioned, with the new Sea of Thieves season, we have some new items in the Pirate Emporium. I do recommend you get the Plunder Pass if this is a game that you play a lot. There's a lot of additional rewards, and if you get the Plunder Pass, you will get that amount of ancient coins back. You'll get 1,000 ancient coins throughout the season, 750 from the Plunder Pass portion and 250 from the regular portion. So it makes sense if you're a seasoned vet playing this game quite a bit and you're going to hit renown 100 throughout the season. You'll get those ancient coins back, but do it if you want. Whatever you want to do, it's your decision. Nonetheless, we also have a bunch of new season rewards with season 8 going up to rank 100 as always. And if you get all the way to rank 100 and you're a pirate legend, you will actually unlock the Flameheart sword, which is pretty awesome, and the Scar of Cursed Bone. If you have yet to reach PL, there's also the Ravenwood ship cosmetics that'll be unlocked if you have the Plunder Pass, and there are also weapons throughout are the ghost weapons, which is pretty cool, as well as some kind of Flameheart cosmetics and all of that. There's also some milestones that have been added, but the two main things that have been added, if you go into the reputation portion of your pirate logs, you've got two new factions, which are the Servants of the Flame and the Guardians of Fortune. Now these can go all the way up to rank 1000 with their own respective rewards that you can buy in the new hideouts dedicated to these factions. There's a ton of new commendations, which I'm going to make, obviously, like I always do. I will make a complete commendation guide going over all of the commendations in the Servants of Flame and the Guardians of Fortune, but I need to get at least to 100 to get the curses first. That's the main thing people are going to be going for. If you get to rank 100, you can get the curse of the Servants of the Flame, and you can also get the curse of the Guardians of Fortune, which is the skeleton curse, and basically a ghost curse. That's pretty cool, but we'll cover those in a future video where I go over all of the commendations associated with those new factions. So now if you look on your captain's table, you're going to see a new item on there, which is the Hourglass of Fate. And if you look at that, you can see you can change the faction, so you can flip-flop between being the Guardians of Fortune or the Servants of Flame. And if you are, whatever that's on, you could actually vote to pledge to that particular allegiance. And if you do that, now you have entered into the Battle of Flame. You'll also see that same Hourglass at the at all the outposts at the Reaper portion, and you'll also see the Athena on the Athena table. You'll see basically the Guardians of Fortune Hourglass, and this is where you're going to turn in that Hourglass as you rank it up and get more points for it. And again, I'll show you that at the end. Another thing that they've kind of snuck in here is if you want to represent an emissary, which if you're going to be doing these allegiances, you're definitely going to want to represent either the Reaper or the Athena emissary, because we're going to get a lot more value for that Hourglass when we turn it in. But just in case you didn't know, if you were unaware in Sea of Thieves that people were coming after you, now it will tell you, if you put that emissary flag up, hey, you're a target for other boats. But let me tell you something, you don't need an emissary flag to be a target of other boats. So let's talk about entering the battle for the Sea of Thieves. Now that you have picked an allegiance on your table, it will enter you into that respective faction. So now you can see I've entered into the battle for the Sea of Thieves, and now if you look at that Hourglass, you will see that it has an Hourglass value on the top, and also on the bottom it has faction treasures on board, and we're going to go over that a little bit later. But also, one thing that you can do now that you have pledged an allegiance, you will find a closed up war map on your table, and now you can actually vote on that war map and enter into a battle. So there's two ways you can do it. You can defend, or you can vote on the war map. And if you vote on the war map, you are going to dive underwater. It's pretty cool, and you'll be in basically this underwater channel where you can actually see some pretty cool things. But when you're down here, you are essentially server hopping. Okay, you are looking for a server and someone that is of the other allegiance, and you will come out of the water to battle them. So while you're down here essentially just looking for a fight, it's just basically matchmaking, and the other team that you're fighting, they could either be searching the same way that you are, or they could just be representing representing the other faction and just sailing around in the Sea of Thieves in which you would come up. So they can either be searching or quote defending. Nonetheless, when you're down here, if it's been a while and you haven't found a match, it will give you the option to cancel matchmaking, in which point you would be returned to the surface in the same server that you dove down from. So you're not in a new server until you actually find an opponent to fight, and you will emerge from the sea like a skelly ship. It's really cool. And just while we're here, let's take a moment to mention, if you come into a battle as a solo sloop, you will only fight solo sloop players. Even if someone joins you mid-fight, they'll be stuck on the Ferry of the Damned until the fight is over. Nonetheless, if you lose a battle, you will see a picture of your ship in the sunken ocean, and you will be placed on a new server. So even if someone sinks you in these battle for the Sea of Thieves, it's not like you can come back and hunt them down. Once you are sunk, that game is over, and now you will be placed on a new server, and you will essentially be like you loaded into a brand new game. But let's talk about winning. Let's talk about what happens when you win these battles, because it's a lot more fun to win. And this is actually how you're going to be getting allegiance. Now, you'll get a little bit allegiance even if you lose, but when you win, you're going to get significantly more allegiance towards the faction that you are currently pledged. And diving down doing these fights is definitely the best way to increase your allegiance with those factions. There's some other ways that you can do it. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but diving down and matchmaking is the fastest, most efficient way to rank them up. And again, we'll go over that in a little bit more detail later. But nonetheless, when you win a battle, you're going to get a notification that you have defeated the enemy, and on the bottom you're going to see that your streak has increased. So now I have a 1 on the bottom of my screen, because now I have sunk 1 boat, and those rewards get increasingly better up until 5. So when you sink your first ship, you're going to get 10,000 value to your Hourglass. 2 is an additional 12, 3 is an additional 14, 4 is an additional 16, and every 5th sink and further is 20k. So 5 is 20, 6 is 20, 7 is 20, and if you sink a champion of their respective faction, you'll get an additional additional 10 on top of the base value that I'm showing there on the left hand side of the screen. So those are kind of the rewards for your Hourglass as you progressing through. And once you get a streak of 4, you are now a champion of that faction. So here we are, I'm a champion of the Flame because I have killed 4 enemy ships in a row while representing the servant of the Flame. And when you're a champion for either faction, now you're going to have a large icon on your ship visible to everyone to see on the map. So it's that big circle with the crossbones with the flame heart in the middle. Same thing for the Athena's going to happen, except it's going to be like an Athena icon. Now, it's not really going to matter as much when you're Reaper, because you're probably going to be representing the Reaper Emissary, and you're going to be on the map anyway. But just keep that in mind. Once you hit champion status, now you are visible on the map. And speaking about the rewards specifically in the Hourglass streaks, and we're going to talk about this just for a minute because it's a very risk versus reward system. If you were to sink without selling your Hourglass, you will lose all the value. Now, you're still going to have been getting allegiance just from playing and winning your fights, and again, that's probably where you're going to get the vast majority of your allegiance rank, is just from playing and winning fights. But where do you stop, right? At what point do you stop your streak? And I'll tell you, in my opinion, I think that's at 5, because you've maximized the amount of reward you're going to be getting per fight. Everything after that, you're only getting an additional 20, and at that point you've got almost 70,000+ gold on your Hourglass. So you don't want to keep risking that just for another 20, and you might want to reset. The only thing that really changes is if you look in the commendations for each particular faction, there is a commendation to get a streak of 10. So if you're like me and you like to get commendations, you're certainly going to want to try to get that streak of 10 on each side at least one time just to unlock the commendation. But after that, in my opinion, I would recommend stopping at 5 and going to turn in your Hourglass. But you can see after a streak of 10 here, I've gotten 172,000 on my Hourglass, right? And my, you're going to begin, I'm getting that Servant of Flame reputation, but I just did that because I want to get that Fiery Strike commendation. And again, there's also one in the Athena's Fortune of the similar to get 10 in a row. So if you go into your commendations here on the second row, here's that streak of 10. Also to the right of that, there's one that says get maximum streak. Okay, and again, I'll talk about all the commendations in a separate video, but that maximum streak is actually the 5. Nonetheless, whenever you want to stop, Okay, and again, I don't recommend going to 10 other than the commendation. I recommend 4 or 5, and then coming and resetting. And when you reset, which is by going to an outpost, or you can go to Reaper's Hideout if you are the Reaper faction, you're going to walk up to that hourglass that's on the table and vote to basically no longer pledge. You're turning in your pledge, I guess. I don't want to pledge with you anymore, right? And at that point, you're going to get the value that you've turned in. And the reason that I recommend, and I highly recommend, representing your emissary as well for the respective value is because you're also going to get the emissary bonus to that turn in. So you see, when I turned that in, I made that 172k, but I also got a huge bonus from my Reaper emissary rank to the gold, right? I almost got 400k overall. Nonetheless, when you turn in the hourglass, another thing that you're going to get is you're also going to be getting a little bit of additional allegiance for turning it in. So the risk for reward there comes, not only are you losing gold, but if you're just playing until you're sinking, you're also not going to be getting that extra allegiance earned by turning in your hourglass. So a streak of 10 right there, right? I got 2 whole levels. So 4 or 5, you can expect a level or 2. Now, the other way that you can get some allegiance is selling emissary flags of the opposing faction. So if you're a Reaper, obviously you need to go to Reaper's Hideout to sell that particular Athena flag, which causes a problem. Honestly, it's not, it's kind of problematic because every time you dive for a battle, it's like going into the tunnels of the damned when you're doing the, Pirate's Life Tall Tales. You're going to lose all your loot that's on your boat. The only thing that you can keep are your storage crates, your cannonball crates and things like that. So every time you dive, you're going to lose it. So let's say you have a fight, all the way out in the Devil's Roar or something against an Athena 1. You're not going to, drive your boat all the way to Reaper's Hideout just to sell one measly grade 1 Athena flag. So one of the things me and my buddy were talking about, which I wish they would do, it's very, very smart idea, is to give us an emissary flag storage crate that is not necessarily loot. So, I do think that they shouldn't allow you to take loot in and out of servers, because that would allow people to just dive and run away with all their loot, which would kind of create problems in and of itself. But give me like an emissary storage crate where I could store like 3 or 4 emissary flags, specifically because this mode makes that something that we want to utilize, right? I don't want to have to drive all the way back to Reaper's Hideout every time I kill an Athena ship just to sell the flag. That's pretty silly. Now, it's a little bit better if you're selling your Reaper flags, because you can sell them now. You don't have to take it to the Reaper outpost. You can sell your Reaper flags to the mysterious stranger at any outpost. So that's a lot easier if you're running as the Athena, Guardians of Fortune faction, because you have a lot, more places to sell that flag. Hopefully they allow us to sell the Reaper flag to the outposts at those stands as well. I think that would be ideal to kind of fix that problem. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and briefly talk about the faction stash. Another way to kind of increase your hourglass multiplier is by having items on your ship of that faction. So you can see, because I have loot on my ship, it says my faction stash grade is 1. So if I get invaded and kill a ship, I'll have a small multiplier to the amount of gold that I win. But it's not a really good method to use. It needs to be fine-tuned a little bit. I don't recommend it, because if you lose a battle, you're going to lose your hourglass and you're going to lose all the loot that you're saving. It's much faster and much more efficient to dive for battles without loot and gain streaks that way. Trust me, as of right now, the loot stash is not worth it. Another thing that you can do once you get to a champion rank, which is a streak of 4 or more, you can now actually vote to participate in the championship battles, which is voting to fight against a larger ship. So if you're on a sloop, you could fight a brig. If you're on a brig, you could fight a galleon. And the only really scenarios where you want to do this is if you really want to challenge yourself, or if the matchmaking for your particular ship size is taking too long. If you're on a brig and you're like, man, I can't find a match against a brig, let me just go ahead and go against the galleon, and challenge yourself, see if you can get those victories. You're not going to get anything bonus for sinking a larger ship. Again, the only time you're going to get a bonus is if you sink a championship, where you're going to get that extra 10k. Another kind of secret, I shouldn't say secret, it's in the patch notes. People are calling it like a secret nerf. It's not really a secret nerf. It's in the patch notes, but they did nerf the cursed cannonballs in 2 ways. One, you're going to find them less often, so they're less less prevalent prevalent in pretty much everywhere, and also the effects of them have a significantly decreased effect on the players. So if you hit somebody with a limp ball, it's gonna, you know, make them limp around for a much shorter period of time. I don't really like that nerf personally. I think they think maybe people were gonna stack the curse balls and then go into the fights, but you know, it wasn't really that big of a deal. Honestly, you know, people weren't really calling for it. So I want to talk about wait times, because a lot of people have been saying, man, I get stuck underwater for a long time and I'm not getting a match. And I think I've kind of figured out what's happening, and I've tested it several times, and this is what's happened to me almost every time. So you can see this says, oh, we had less than a minute for a matchmaking, but we've been down here for like 15-20 minutes sometimes not finding a match. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? So we decided to cancel it, and every time that I've canceled it, when I come back up, remember, you're going to come back up on the server you were on, because it saves your spot until you find a match. And I've noticed that there's always a ship pretty close by, and if you notice, you cannot dive underwater for a battle if you have a nearby ship. It'll say you can't dive with a rival ship nearby. So I think the game is thinking that we have a rival ship nearby, and it's not letting us matchmake. Now I can't prove that, but that's my theory, because I've noticed it happening almost every time that my wait times are just crazy long. I think there might be a ship near you on your designated server in your kind of safe spot. So if it's really long, it might be worth popping up, seeing if there's a ship either running from it or going to sink it. Now there are some problems with this PvP as well in Season 8 that I hope they fix. I'll add a little bit of ways that I think they could kind of fix this, but one thing that you're going to see is sometimes you're going to attack people and there's going to be multiple ships, and they're kind of allianced, they're hanging out to each, you know, with each other, and they're helping each other defend, which I think is very cowardice, but nonetheless, it's gonna happen in games like this, right? People will do whatever they can to win in a video game, and it's kind of unfair because you're really playing this to get a fair 1v1 match. The flip side is if you happen to sink multiple ships, say you dive for a battle and there are multiple ships that are hanging out helping each other out, if you can pull it off and you can sink both of those ships, you're gonna get a streak bonus for both of the ships that you sink. So that's pretty, you know, pretty awesome. But again, it's also not fair to be going diving under and then popping up and there's 2-3 ships you got to fight. The other possible scenario that could happen where there could be multiple ships in the scenario is simply if you're fighting in an area of the map and other ships that are on the map just come and they see, oh, here's a Reaper over here fighting, I'm going to go kind of join in on the fight. So they may just sail over there and now you're fighting multiple ships. Now it's a little bit more even because it's kind of 1v1v1, and those create some pretty fun scenarios, but again, that's kind of outside of the realm of this entire purpose of this battle. You're really coming here so that you can have a one-on-one fight. And what I think they should do is, you notice that you're going to be in a small arena, right? This small circle that you can't go out of. If you go out of it, your ship will explode and you'll lose the battle. I also think that other ships on that server shouldn't be able to enter into that realm. I think that that would be a way to solve that problem a little bit. But that's just my opinion. You know, again, if you know you come on top in these scenarios, you're going to get that streak bonus for every ship that you sink. So there is that flip side that you can get multiple bonuses pretty quickly. But nonetheless, that's going to wrap it up. There's a lot of stuff in, you know, Season 8 that have come with this. You can now drink your grog infinitely while you're downstairs without getting drunk, so you can work on those milestones, but have fun in these battles. You know, get on your, you know, boats with your buddies and get to cracking on these fools. Have some fun out there on the seas. Enjoy Season 8. There's a lot of promising things to it. Again, there are some things that we're going to need to polish up, I think, but most part, it's a really nice, you know, way to bandage the wound of not having PvP. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it. As always, it's Damron. I hope you guys like this video, and hopefully I'll see you on the seas.